Hello, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the PHLY Eagles Podcast. Wulf, EJ Smith, live from the Xfinity Mobile Studio and presented by Bet365. And Ashley, we've got a special early show for you on a Tuesday as we prepare to fly out to Indianapolis. And boy, will our arms be tired. But we have some very juicy discussions about the Eagles to get into, EJ, because just about 4 days ago, we
good math by you. Yeah,
spent a lot of time buckling down and chopping it up with Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman. And we are finally at liberty to discuss those conversations, EJ. And I want to know everything that you think was interesting about what they said. We're going to talk about AJ Brown. We're going to talk about Jeff Stoutland. We're going to talk about Sean Mannion. We're going to talk about the tight end position. We're going to talk about Tanner McKee and Jaelan Phillips. Lots to get into. Some very interesting stuff, EJ. Let's begin at the top. Let's start with AJ Brown. You tell me what's brewing on this front. Do the Eagles want to trade number 11?
Yeah, it was good to hear from Howie and Nick, first and foremost, going into the combine. And I did find it very interesting, the space that remains in the conversation that we had with them about AJ Brown. So I think we'll start with Howie Roseman, his comments on AJ Brown, because I feel like he's the one who has final say, and I think that therefore they should take precedent. We'll get to Nick Sirianni's in a minute, although I do think they might be the more eyebrow raising of the two. Okay. But Howie Roseman on AJ Brown, I will read his quotes here. He says, "I go back to what I said before the season. It's really hard to find great players. AJ's a great player. From my perspective, we're looking to improve in all areas, and you don't do that by subtracting." Now that sounds like the stock standard answer we've gotten from Howie on AJ Brown. Pretty much
the business of getting rid of good players.
Trade deadline. Yeah, we don't trade great players here, which we will unpack in a second. When asked directly about the potential to listen to offers for AJ, fielding calls on AJ Brown, Howie Roseman went on to say, "You never know what someone is willing to do. Certainly, we've been in situations where there were guys we didn't anticipate trading that we got an offer that was too good for, and then you balance it with what you can get there." This is the big part of the quote here to me. "Without getting into specifics on any player, we're always listening. We are always kind of open. There's very few things I wouldn't shoot down without even hearing with what that means, because how does it hurt to listen?" Again, we are always listening is the headline here to me. Howie Roseman,
he said a similar thing about Tanner McKee when he was asked about him later on, right?
Yeah, which I think is also telling, right? I do take Howie Roseman at his word. If you ask him about pretty much any player on the Eagles roster, he would say, I'll pick up the phone and hear what the offer is.
He would not be doing his job otherwise.
Right. But I do think the way that Howie Roseman has messaged this does leave open the potential for them to trade AJ Brown. And it also signifies to me that there is a price that the Eagles would trade AJ Brown for, which again, some people will say, of course there's a price.
As there should be.
Yeah, right. Of course that there's a price, there's a number the Eagles would be willing to trade AJ Brown for, whether that's a first round pick, whether that's a future first round pick, I think is, something up for discussion. But to me, this is not no. This is a space that somewhere in between yes and no. Will AJ Brown be back? And I do think it signifies that if they get that late first round pick, do you feel like that is the requisite value for a player like AJ Brown? I do think that there's a real chance. Now, Howie kind of pushed back on the idea that he has traded disgruntled players before, players who didn't want to be with the organization, but there is a precedent for it, right? You look at Carson Wentz, you look at Hassan Reddick. I think those are two big ones. I think Zach Ertz, like, he wanted to be with the Eagles, but he wanted he wanted a contract extension, which
Mm-hmm.
kind of, led to him wanting to be traded. But I think Hassan Reddick and Carson Wentz being traded are examples of the team being willing to move on from a player that may or may not want to be with the organization any longer. But with both of those trades, the compensation had to be right for them to do it. And I think that's where we're at with AJ Brown. If they don't get the compensation, they don't get the draft capital they want back, I think he will be in an Eagles uniform. But to me, Howie's answer is for the right price, yes.
Well, and for both of them, they did not let it drag. They did not want to let it drag on. They prioritized being able to get requisite value.
Yeah.
As opposed to let's let them, calling their bluff. Let's play on it, and then if not, we'll trade you for less as it moves forward. I don't think that necessarily means that's what's going to happen here. I think AJ Brown is more important to the life cycle of this team than either of those guys were, which is saying a lot, but is also true. But it was also interesting about this whole back and forth, EJ, both with Howie and Nick, is this was a fun experience to watch as just a member of the media. Like I think people who enjoy the Philadelphia Eagles beat core situation, like we're there in the draft room and everybody's huddled around and obviously everybody's fighting over for questions. But I think both times double down on an AJ question because you were asking a different thing. The question was like, do you want AJ Brown here? Are you going to keep him? And your perspective is more, well, is your understanding that AJ wants to be here?
And how much does that influence? Yeah, how much does that influence the decision you make? Because I do think that is the bigger question here. Of course, the Eagles want AJ Brown back. Of course, they want him to be a part of their plans moving forward. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL. So I don't think. Listen, I'm not trying to besmirch anybody's question or criticize anybody's question here.
No,
but I do think it's an important
question.
follow up to do you want AJ Brown back?
I think
he will be back.
It's very easy to think the Eagles, the thing that they would like the most is AJ Brown to be back and happy. The second thing that they would like is to get appropriate value for him in return.
Yep.
And like that is probably the next best thing.
Right? Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly framed. It's like in an ideal world, because again, I think that it's reductive to just say like, just don't trade AJ Brown. Like that's the first thing they should do in the offseason is just don't trade AJ Brown. Don't let AJ Brown leave. And it's like I think these things are more complicated. I think that Howie Roseman has proven to be like understanding that these things are more complicated. He answered my question by basically saying he does what's best for the team. He does whatever's best for the Philadelphia Eagles. Mm-hmm. But in that answer, I do think sometimes it is best for the team to not drag something like this out. So I think for that reason, like, I probably went into the room like 55-45, 60-40 that he gets traded, especially like, in light of Nick Sirianni's answers on this. Well, I'm probably more like 65-35 at this point that AJ gets traded. I'm a little bit further along.
Interesting.
What did you want me to read the Nick quotes?
Yes, and then as you find that, I also want you to think about, do you think if I tell you that the Eagles are going to trade AJ Brown, do you think it happens in like the first 3 days of the league year, or do you think it is something that drags on and they're looking to find and they haven't found it yet, and then they're maybe willing to do it on draft night?
It's a good question. I think it's something that could linger into draft night. I think that because again, as much as I think it will happen, that's more of a reflection of the fact that I think the market will be there with some of these teams in the latter half of the first round. Maybe that market takes a little bit of time to materialize, and draft night, is what kind of creates the urgency. So I'd probably guess it lingers to draft night, but no, I do. I think there's going to be a market, which is why I think that they'll move on from AJ Brown. If I don't think they're going to move on from AJ Brown for a third round pick, well, I don't think that they're going to do it even for a second. I think it's a future first. I think it's a late first round pick in this year's draft. And, for that reason, I think that they'll get it. And I think that's why it'll happen. So I've got Nick's quotes here. Nick, when asked pretty directly, will AJ Brown be back next year, said, I can't guarantee how anything is going to play out going into next season. He kind of, I didn't have this in the quote I wrote down, but he kind of alluded to the fact, like, I don't even know if I'll be the head coach, in next year. And, kind of pointed to that and said, you can't guarantee anything past tomorrow. He went on to later say, does he want to be here? Yes. Do I want him to be here? Yes.
Okay. There you go. That'll do it for What's Brewing, presented by our friends at Wawa. the AJ Brown of it all from Howie Roseman.
That's like our most said phrase at this point in the offseason, the AJ Brown of it all.
Yeah, I know. And listen, I get that it's tiresome. Howie and Nick are going to speak later today at the podium. I'm sure they will be asked about it again. We won't spend time on it. Their public comments. I feel like we can be done with whatever their public comments are, and now we will continue to do some reporting and also just monitor what actually happens.
Yeah.
All right. From here, EJ, how I want to do this is I want you to inverted pyramid me here. Okay. I want you to prioritize what you thought were the most interesting things you heard from either Nick or Howie. I'm guessing a lot of it's Howie. Actually, there were some interesting Nick things in here. And then we'll just unpack it. And at the end, if there's anything else I want to discuss, I will shoot it over your way.
Yeah, I think there's a 2A and a 2B here, and I'm curious which one you expect me to go with here. I would probably go Nick on Sean.
One is more important to the 2026 Eagles. One is more interesting about the last month or so.
Exactly. Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, the Nick on Sean Mannion was interesting to me because this is our.
I think
first
that's right
time
because we're going to need to go to break, and the other one's going to be a little bit juicier.
Yeah, this is our first time hearing from Nick Sirianni since Sean Mannion was hired as offensive coordinator, and I thought it was very interesting that Nick was honest about the process taking longer than they maybe expected, and the candidate that they settled on not being everything that they thought, not checking every box that they went into.
We shouldn't say settled on. We shouldn't say so. The candidate they found,
the candidate that they eventually chose. I didn't mean settled in a negative connotation. Yes. Nick Sirianni said they had 17 interviews and they had double interviews for, I think you said 7. Yeah, at least 17 interviews. You're right. And for that reason, he said that they went in prioritizing play calling experience. And, obviously Sean Mannion impressed them enough that they didn't prioritize it at the end of the day, obviously with Sean Mannion. And I thought that was refreshingly honest from Nick Sirianni and also insightful into like how impressed they are with what Nick Sirianni said was the vision and the conviction that Sean Mannion has in what system he will run with the Eagles. And we can get into what that looks like. I think that Nick Sirianni gave us some good indications on what a Sean Mannion system will look like, what it will prioritize. But it did. It surprised me to hear Nick talk about the fact that he, play calling experience was something on his list when they went into the process. And when they settled on Sean Mannion, they decided that wasn't as important as maybe they originally thought.
Yeah, there were 2 interesting things he said about the process and the way that it worked out. One of them is that he did expect going in that he wanted somebody with experience. And it's you could frame it similarly to the AJ Brown thing, where the best thing that could have happened would have been somebody with experience who we like the upside a lot, and there's a good track record. Barring that, we would probably rather have someone who will take the gamble on and hope that they can be good, rather than someone who has experience, but it's not my favorite kind of experience.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, and it's obvious that Mannion was not. They didn't begin this search thinking that Mannion was going to be one of the main contenders. And then they made a bunch of calls, and the more calls around the league they made, not even just on the Mannion front, but like, who do you like? Those things bubbled Mannion to the surface, and then they talked to him, and they were very impressed. The other thing that was interesting in terms of like what he expected going in is he said entering the search, he was interested in the Shanahan style offense, but not necessarily needing it. It was more, he wanted to find out more about it. He wanted to talk to people with that experience. It was like, I would like it, but I don't need it. And then the more he went into the process, the more smitten with that offense he felt like he became.
Yeah. So this will dovetail nicely into what we'll talk about at the other side of the break. But this is a good discussion we should have too. Nick Sirianni talked about.
Should we save it? Should we do it on the other side?
Why don't
I think this could go. Okay, go ahead.
No, yeah, maybe we should make it a big package deal.
A little tease.
Yeah, let's talk about what Nick Sirianni was so smitten about with Sean Mannion and the Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay systems.
And it might surprise you.
And how it kind of leads into the next thing we're going to talk about.
There you go. Stay tuned. Would you like to make watching the game a little bit more exciting and maybe give yourself a little bit of extra cash? You bet you do. And you bet on Bet365, because Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide, and they live stream over 780,000 events each year with early payout offers across the NBA and NHL. Bet365 pioneered live in-game betting, and today they offer the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. It's a tip-off Tuesday. You know what that means? Place qualifying same-game parlay bets with the Safety Net Bet feature on Tuesday's NBA games and get up to $10 in bonus bets if the bet loses. Terms and conditions apply. Just download the app and use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Breaking news, new customers now get $200 in bonus bets when you bet $5 win or lose by signing up and using the code PHLY365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
I know everybody's got their favorite hard tea, but have you guys ever turned the can to read what's inside some of these? You can't, because they won't tell you. And while they hide what's inside, Crooked Tea, they brag about it. Crooked Tea brews real USDA organic tea for real flavor with zero sugar. No fake junk hiding behind the label. What you see is always what you drink. Next time you're at the store, flip the can on that favorite beverage of yours. And if you can't find the ingredients, just put it back, guys. Seriously, just put it back. Then go find yourself a Crooked Tea. Again, zero sugar, real tea, and fully transparent. You guys know it already. Real recognize real. So why drink the fake stuff? Crooked Tea. The only thing better is a strip sack in the Super Bowl. Visit crookedtea.com to find a store near you guys. Again, that's crookedtea.com to find a store near you so you can start drinking the real stuff too.
Back on the PHLY Eagles podcast, Bo and EJ. All right, after that delicious tease you had, EJ, let's deliver. What is it about the Sean Mannion offense that attracted Nick Sirianni so?
So really jumped out to me that the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan scheme and what Sean Mannion will bring to the Eagles, Nick Sirianni really prioritized and talked about the run game and the run concepts that system uses, how it marries up to the play action game and the pass game, but really specifically how this is sort of the modern way to deal with defensive fronts, changing the look late in the pre-snap process to really be able to account for some of those things. So one of the biggest, most interesting quotes we got from Nick, in my opinion, was this one here. So he says, with the way the NFL is right now, you've seen a lot of teams that have done things where they're reading pure progressions to handle all the junk that's being thrown at you by the defense. And this is in the pass game he's talking about. Basically, offenses are going to pure progression reads where you can read 1, 2, 3, and 4 because it's so hard to guess coverages these days. And this is me talking, not Nick. So back to the quote from Nick here. He says, well, this version of the run game is kind of like that. It is kind of in that mix as well. It's the run game version of it. There's a lot of junk that's being thrown at you. This handles a lot of it. And then what I loved about it is the way it meshes up and marries the play action world and how it fits some of the guys that are on our roster. So he goes on to explain it further. But to me, this is the new way to run the football in the NFL to deal with what defenses are doing to you. That jumped out to me. That is again, it dovetails nicely into Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman talking about Jeff Stoutland's departure. But I think for the first part of this, we should just talk about that being the standout feature of a Sean Mannion offense to Nick Sirianni.
It is impossible, though, not to bring Stoutland into this part of the conversation.
Sure, yeah.
Because it is Nick saying that his priority in the offensive coordinator search was fixing the running game. And that's so fascinating because for all the as we've talked about, 2 years ago, the Eagles with Jeff Stoutland as run game coordinator had the best running game in football. And last year they did not. And immediately we got to change everything about the running game. We can get to after that some of the unpacking that Nick had when asked about, Stoutland's run game, quote unquote, demotion midway through the season and the interpersonal dynamics at play. But it is fascinating, both from why does Nick want that when, they were so successful 2 years ago, but also from okay, maybe it's telling us a little bit about some of the frustrations of the play action game and the under center stuff really were wedded to the way that Jeff Stoutland wanted the running game to look. And so it is going to be a really interesting experiment in terms of what the offense looks like moving forward without Jeff Stoutland as the run game coordinator.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a reflection. I do like, to give Nick Sirianni, like, to kind of try and play his side of the argument here. Eagles offense really struggled last year being, dictating terms to the defense. They were oftentimes reactive to what the defense was doing and struggled because of that. How many times did we hear Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni talk about the fact that they had unscouted looks, right? Or that, they didn't have a good handle on what they were getting from opposing defenses.
The unscouted looks is a great callback.
Yeah. I mean, we heard it so much, right? So,
yeah,
I think that this is, to Nick, a way to become less reliant on having the answers to the test, being able to be more aggressive, and again, not having to be so reactive. So obviously the Eagles, what's that?
That's very well put.
Yeah, obviously the Eagles had a historic run game while being reactive, while being able to, figure out the answers to the test. But last year, I think, was a reflection of, how that can, the downside of it. So, Nick mentioned that he wanted the run game, or that he made the run game more collaborative last year. And, when talking about Jeff Stoutland, and I think that this is the next step toward that. So at this point, I think we probably can kind of put the Sean Mannion talk to bed and pivot to what was my 2B in the inverted pyramid here, which is Howie and Nick on Jeff Stoutland's departure. And the first thing I would say about it, and I'm, I think I know you agree with me based off our conversations before the show, there is a wide gulf between the way that Nick and Howie talked about Jeff Stoutland. I wouldn't say they were both complimentary of him, but, I would say that there were different tenors to the way that they discussed that topic.
I mean, hugely so. When Howie was talking about Jeff Stoutland, he was not, I think, authentically, like laying it on. Like, Stoutland is still a dear friend of mine.
I got the quote. You want me to read it?
Sure.
I don't think it's a secret how close I am to Stout. I am to Stout. How much I appreciate our relationship, the process that we go through. I probably have 50 stories on our draft process and how we went through him. I miss him. I care about him. And then he said, but obviously there was a change there.
Now we will get to actually like the draft process for offensive linemen and what changes in a minute. But that contrasts with Nick, who was essentially like, it was another member of the coaching staff that he lost, and was pretty matter of fact about it. Not putting him under the bus, but like, he was a big part of what we did. Now we got to figure out how to move on without him. And then he was asked about, the reporting from Jeff McClain that the run game coordinator was taken away from Stoutland at some point through the season, and how Nick explained it was that it went along with what we heard, what Nick said, which was that he became more involved in the offense.
Yeah.
And that meant every phase of the offense. And it was interesting. He actually broke it down: third down, red zone, short yardage, run game, play action, and drop back. And that meant in the running game, instead of it being Stout's in charge, and the meeting rooms are split, right? And that's part of the change here. And Nick actually said that he plans to carry that forward into this season. Whereas in the past, it would be, okay, there's a run meeting over here, there's a pass meeting over here.
Run pods and pass pods is how
we got to split up our time. Yeah. Instead, we're all going to be in everything, and you wonder about the efficiency of that. And it's going to be more collaborative. And so instead of it just being Stout and whoever else is in charge of the running game, it's we're all doing it, and Stout is maybe like leading the discussion to some degree, or I wouldn't even say final say, but has like the rough draft or something like that. Then all of a sudden it gets bandied about, and yeah, you can understand why Stout would take that as something of a demotion. That's not how Nick framed it, but it was very interesting insight into what was obviously a coaching staff that was struggling to find answers on offense and to some degree flailing at it.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that Nick did say that they wanted him back, but I think that quote, I think
as the offensive line coach,
Yeah, I
as
was
the
going to
run
say
game
that
coordinator.
quote to me is a window into something that we've discussed a lot on the show that is so important when you were talking about Jeff Stoutland's departure, which is I think it's clear that the organization thought very highly of him as the offensive line coach. I think Nick Sirianni's answers about Sean Mannion and the run game he's bringing and the way that last season went in Nick's eyes, I think it is pretty clear that him as the run game coordinator was the sticking point for the coaching staff and really for him, for Jeff Stoutland as well, obviously. So, which kind of brings me to my takeaway from this, which is I don't know if I love the way that this is shaping up for Nick Sirianni in terms of like narrative, like narration wise, like where it has now become like Nick Sirianni is betting on his ability to reshape the offensive coaching staff and reshape the Eagles run game into something that is more effective without Jeff Stoutland. You know, I think the results are going to be a reflection of Nick Sirianni at this point, especially like you heard how Howie Roseman talked about Jeff Stoutland. And that's not to say that Howie Roseman, you know, was like, oh, I don't want Jeff Stoutland to leave. Like, I can't believe you did this. But I do think that the way that they both talked about it, it's clear that this was something that Nick kind of felt was necessary to, you know, bring the Eagles run game to where it needs to be. So the results are going to be reflective of Nick Sirianni's decision. And I think, again, like, maybe the Eagles run game is dominant next season and he's proven right. But if it's not, it will be a reflection of Nick Sirianni.
So is there a part of you that feels like this is to some degree analogous to the Chip Kelly, Howie Roseman situation, where Jeff Stoutland is still on paper in the building and cast aside to let somebody else sink?
I don't think he's in the building. You know, I don't think it's like they're going to realize that they made the wrong.
He's under contract, right?
He's under contract. Yeah, that is slightly different than like being around. But
yeah,
I mean, I do think there are some similarities there. I think that, you know, if this doesn't go well next season, you know, if the Eagles run game is really struggling and, you know, we have an off season of Nick pushing for it to look the way that it looks, then yeah, I do think that this has that similar feel where, I mean, I think we can all agree, like this next season is going to be a real reflection and a lot about Nick Sirianni and, you know, will have significant impact on the way that, you know, his future prospects. Right. And I think that it does kind of remind me of that, you know, Chip Kelly, Howie Roseman situation where if it goes poorly, if you're Jeffrey Lurie, you're looking at Nick Sirianni saying this was your idea, you know, and they lost one of the best assistant coaches in the NFL really in the last few decades. Yeah, I do think that this is a like high risk, high reward situation for Nick Sirianni. And honestly, I would say the risk probably outweighs the reward to some degree. Because when you let a coach like Jeff Stoutland leave the building, obviously they didn't fire him, but you know, when he is departing because of the fact that these things transpired, yeah, that does put pressure on Nick Sirianni to make sure that the next, you know, version, the next iteration of this Eagles run game is a productive one. What do you think?
I think, I don't think that that's what they're expecting to do.
And well, yeah, you're not expecting it, but I think that
no,
yeah, go ahead.
But I wouldn't put zero turkeys on Jeff Stoutland as the offensive line coach next year.
I mean, listen, stranger things have
happened.
I
would probably put 3 turkeys on it. You know, I'm not putting a lot, but I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah, I think it's more like this could be the thing. If, you know, I'm not saying that, you know, I think this is likely. I'm not saying that this is something that we, you know, would. I mean, obviously, it's not something we push for. But like, if Nick gets fired at the end of next season, this could be something we trace back to, like the decision to move the run game on from a coach like Jeff Stoutland. So I don't mean to be alarmist. I don't mean to be like, you know, hitting the panic button in any way here. I'm just saying that this is kind of reshaping the way that next season, how important next season is for Nick Sirianni.
I think we should say, if the Eagles are going to hire Sean Mannion to be the offensive coordinator, they probably do need a different run game coordinator. It probably would not have been. It would not have made sense to have Stout be that guy when you hire Sean Mannion, right? And so, you know, it's very unfortunate debris. But if that's the decision you're going to make, if Stout doesn't want to just be offensive line coach, that is the decision you've made.
Yeah, I just think the way that this has unfolded, it does feel like Nick Sirianni's vision took them in this direction. Yeah.
We should say on the, Howie was asked about sort of, are you looking for different kinds of offensive linemen now as they enter a draft season when we expect them to hit this early? And he said, first of all, that this is a nice job patting himself on the back, but Howie and Stout really truly see very eye to eye when it comes to evaluating offensive line prospects. They value the same things. He could count
13 years. He probably can only count on one hand how many disagreements they've had.
Right. About prospects, not in general. Yeah. Which is good. And people will tell you Howie is one of the best evaluators they have in the building. But does this system change anything? And he said very marginally we might have a slightly higher weighting on athleticism and movement skills, but it is not a significant change.
Yeah. Yep. And I thought it was very noteworthy. He said that they are still looking for the critical factors that Jeff Stoutland often talked about. So the types of offensive line prospects we would have expected the Eagles to be interested in with Jeff Stoutland as the offensive line coach, I don't think it's going to change. I do think the confidence you have in them developing those players once they get in the door changes slightly. I don't want to be reductive and pretend that their development staff isn't a big part of their ability to bring these players along. But I think every single player, every single offensive lineman that I've talked to that's come through the Eagles organization will tell you Jeff Stoutland is excellent at developing these players. So it's more of a projection. It is a little bit less of a sure thing, but I think the same types of players are who we'd expect the Eagles to go with in the draft.
I think that's right. Okay, stay tuned. After this break, we will get into Jaelan Phillips, not Jordan Phillips. Jaelan Phillips, the free agency class. Will the Eagles be active in the offseason? And the position that you can expect a different Howie Roseman moving forward.
What if you could have reliable and intelligent Wi-Fi? And what if you could keep it at the same price for 5 whole years? That's the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee. It's Wi-Fi that makes everything in your home work together seamlessly. It finds and fixes problems before you even notice them. It's super intelligent Wi-Fi with a 6th sense. And that lets you stream the game even when your whole family is online during this snowstorm. Just picture it. All your devices working in perfect harmony for 5 whole years. And the best part, no annual contracts, no hidden fees, and Xfinity's best equipment already included. Take it from me. A lot can change in 5 years. Championships are won, records are broken, dreams grow bigger, but your Wi-Fi, it should stay reliable and the price should stay put. Lock in your price and unlock the possibilities with Xfinity. Learn more at xfinity.com. Xfinity. Imagine that. Select plans only. Restrictions apply. So I'm on my way home from work last week, and the thing that happens all the time ends up happening to me. I realize I didn't pack lunch. I'm hungry. I want something affordable, and I want something healthy. And that is why I really love what Wawa has going on right now. They've got $5 deals all day, and honestly, it makes my life so much easier. If you're starting early, you can grab a $5 big breakfast meal deal. We're talking a sizzly, a hash brown, and any size hot or iced coffee. That's a full morning win for $5, available from 5 to 11 a.m. Later in the day, that value keeps rolling. They've got the roasted chicken sandwich or the crispy chicken sandwich created your way, starting at $5. They've even got the new teriyaki recipes for a limited time. So if you're like me, you need to start your day strong and fuel up whenever you need with these $5 Wawa deals. Limited time, exclusions apply. See wawa.com for details. Gotta have a Wawa.
Back on the PHLY Eagles podcast, Bo Wulf, EJ Smith. We've talked AJ Brown. We've talked Sean Mannion. We've talked Jeff Stoutland. What's next for you, EJ, in your order of importance?
I think my turkeys on a Jaelan Phillips extension took a slight uptick after hearing from Howie Roseman.
Okay.
He talked about 2 things that stood out to me when discussing Jaelan Phillips. The first thing is the one that I think is a little bit more obvious, which is that the Eagles place a premium on the offensive and defensive lines. So he talked about that being a priority for them this offseason. And obviously Jaelan Phillips is a big part of that. And he even mentioned how Jaelan Phillips's addition really kind of gave the Eagles defense a boost. You know, how it really kind of reshaped that pass rush. The second part about it, he said that the third round pick that they traded for Jaelan Phillips was really a reflection to like try and win last season. You know, he said if I could trade a third round pick to win a playoff game, I would do that deal every time.
Well, hold on.
He did mention Golden Tate with it.
That's the whole thing. Is he's still holding on. I mean, this is beautiful, Howie Roseman. He's still holding on to being criticized for the Golden Tate trade, and he says he thinks back to that all the time because Golden Tate catches the pass from Nick Foles, and he says, hey, if I could trade a third round pick to win a playoff game, I would do it every time. I would run out of third round picks, which of course is true.
I mean,
it's framing it in a way, a disingenuous way, because maybe you win that game without Golden Tate.
What am I talking to here right now? I mean, come on, Bo. This is literally out of the Bo Wulf playbook.
No,
it's
reframing
not. How dare you to make yourself right?
How dare you? But it is a beautiful Howie aside.
Yes.
But this was much different. This is absolutely Jaelan Phillips absolutely delivered what they wanted him to.
Yeah, I would say it was good process. But the other thing you mentioned is that they got a chance to see Jaelan Phillips up close for 2 months because of the trade. He talked about him being an unbelievable worker, unbelievable leader, incredibly talented player who cares desperately about winning. I still think the Eagles will have a walkaway number. I don't think that it's a foregone conclusion that they will extend Jaelan Phillips. I think he's going to be one of the top players in free agency. But the way that he talked about Jaelan Phillips made me think, you know, I could hear him saying it at the podium, recapping free agency, the importance of getting to see Jaelan Phillips up close and wanting to retain him because of that. So, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, but I think that they will try to get an extension done, and I think there's a real chance that he's back with the Eagles.
It also is in conjunction with, he sort of assessed in a grand way the state of the team and free agency period to come.
Right.
And what he emphasized is he knows, as most GMs know in their hearts, that the most successful way to sustain success is to draft well and sign your own guys.
Yep.
And they are in a position where they have drafted very well, and they now have a bunch of guys, especially on defense, who will have to get paid eventually, and they will not be able to pay everybody. But you would much rather pay your own guys who you know, and there is less guesswork, than sign a comparable player and add in all of this variability. And Jaelan Phillips is now someone who they feel like they know. The flip side to that is, you know, he intimated this is a particularly bad free agency class, and I think, you know, you can check out the ratings wherever you want to look. It's not great.
Yeah.
On the Athletics, you know, Jaelan Phillips is the number 3 guy. So teams have a lot of money to spend in free agency. There's a very good chance the Eagles are not able to compete with whatever Jaelan Phillips is getting offered. But I think you're right that they would like to bring him back. I do not know that they will be able to.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, the turkeys I'd put on it, I'm not going to put turkeys on it because I don't have to right now. You know, the turkeys I'd put on it before, as you know, as of right now, would be a lot higher than if we get to the beginning of free agency, because again, then he's starting to field more offers. I don't know if I feel like he would want to test the market.
Yeah, I don't know why Jaelan Phillips would sign up for.
I mean, the best day of his life was getting traded to the Eagles. I wouldn't discount, you know, a pre-free agency extension, but I agree with you.
What do you think it would take to get him to not even test free agency?
I mean, no, I'm
25. I think
I am agreeing. I don't think 25. No, I don't think 25. I think the Eagles are probably walking away at 25.
I think so too. But I'm saying what's what it would take for him to not even find out. Now, the truth is, we say not even find out. Jaelan Phillips' agent is going to know. He's going to go to the combine this weekend. He's going to talk to every GM. He's going to say, this is my number. He's going to find out, you know, most of these conversations are already happening.
Yeah. No, I think there is a good chance his market takes off. If the injury history makes his market stall a little bit, that's probably the Eagles' window to get him re-signed, extended. And I think, yeah, like I said, I think it will be a priority for them. So, and that was something that I didn't walk into the Eagles draft room feeling strongly about. We had a lot of discussions about it, but yeah, I could see a world where it is like a 2-year fully guaranteed, not fully guaranteed, but heavy guarantees in the first 2 years, and then the third and the fourth season have some injury off ramps for the Eagles. I could see that being the case.
He also said, fairly so, that even if Jaelan Phillips leaves, they view that as a successful trade.
But he did mention that they can't sign anybody in free agency. Now, again, not a great class, but they can't sign anybody in free agency if they want the comp pick.
If they want the comp pick. Well,
Bradley Chubb.
It's not. I think Bradley Chubb got released, so he doesn't.
Oh shoot! Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not. It's not. You can't sign anybody.
No, you're saying he doesn't count, right? Like you could sign Bradley Chubb and still get the comp pick.
Chubb,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So yes, I thought that was interesting. What's next on your list?
I mean, it's a question you asked. I feel like I should let you be the one to talk about
it. Sure. I had asked him about, in general, when you have a new staff and a new system on offense, how much does that change? Like you have graded these guys already before you went into it. Are there players or traits or positions where you now have to change the way you're evaluating? And he took that's when he focused on the offensive line. But I meant it more generally. And so I then asked specifically about tight end. And this was a very interesting answer. And I think you have it written down. So I will read it here. He said, the tight end position starts with me and evolving. From my perspective, I've always had an affinity for the receiving tight ends. I think that's shown in my work. As you evolve as a GM, as an evaluator, and you watch what's out there, you've got to be cognizant about the fact that on some levels, the game has changed. There's room for both of those spots. When you look at our room this year, probably needed a more diverse skill set at that position, which is a nice way of saying our tight ends didn't block well enough this year. And so this is very interesting. And I think it is in conjunction with the new offense, but it is also Howie saying, I need to care a little bit more about a tight end's blocking ability.
Yeah, no, I thought
we should just say this is in the context of the only tight end under contract on the entire roster is EJ Jenkins.
Right. Shout out to EJ Jenkins.
I love EJ.
I do. I like EJ Jenkins and I every day in the locker room. What's up, EJ? What's up, EJ? So yeah, I like an EJ Jenkins. I would say it was one of the more like insightful things that Howie talked about in terms of, a self-evaluation of how he likes to build a roster. And I also think it shows you kind of where their head is at building, an offense around what Sean Mannion is going to want to do. I think it's funny, like every time Nick Sirianni talks about what he wants or what he thinks is improving for the Eagles offense and, what he prioritized with Sean Mannion, the play action game is always so front of mind for him. I think the tight ends are going to be a big part of that. So when I'm looking at, we did the draft exercise yesterday, like I made sure to mention I want a nasty two-way tight end. I think they're going to want some guys who can offer that, blocking element in addition to being probably traitsy and physically gifted in the pass game. Maybe not high volume, high production receivers, but guys who, I would say like George Kittle is probably like your best case scenario. Like you're, somebody who is basically can serve as a 6 offensive lineman with that physicality, with the run after the catch ability. So obviously there's, not necessarily like that top of the tight end class, option. Kenyon Sadiq is a good player. I don't know if he's quite like, run game force multiplier, but I think you're going to see that prioritized for them this offseason.
I thought that was a very interesting answer. Yes, it's something we will file it away and see if that is, we will follow the work.
Eagles trade a second-round pick for Jackson Hawes.
If his work reflects that. Okay, time for another break. On the other side, more to come. And Howie will explain why it is he went out of his way to defend Nick Sirianni a couple months ago, and maybe some expectations for what will happen with the other Eagles pending free agents. Stay tuned.
Do you really want Jalen Hurts returning punts? What about Devontae Smith playing nose tackle? Of course not. It's not worth the risk, the time, or the money. You keep your stars focused on what they do best, and the same ideas apply to your business. For small and mid sized businesses, competing with bigger companies isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter. With competition heating up, you can't afford to fall behind. AI goes way beyond ChatGPT, and I know it can get overwhelming fast. That's why having a trusted guide like Togo matters. Instead of buying expensive AI tools, Togo helps you build exactly what you need at a fraction of the cost. Togo streamlines your operations by handling customer service, accounting, order management, logistics, admin, data entry, and even complex multi-step processes without the cost of building it all in-house. Every engagement starts with free process mapping, and Togo doesn't bill a dime until the real work begins. Programs start as low as $1,000 a month and are built to scale without breaking the bank. Visit Harness Togo and mention PHLY for a free operational assessment. If you guys are like me, you probably are already starting to size up some of the home renovations you have planned for when it gets warmer outside. And for that reason, I want to tell you guys about the TrueMark Financial Home Equity line of credit. It allows you guys to tap into your home's equity to handle renovations, upgrades, or whatever's next on your list. A TrueMark Financial HELOC Select gives you the flexibility to borrow when you need it on your timeline. You start with a revolving line of credit. Use only what you need, and when you're ready, you can lock in all or part of your balance at a fixed rate for predictable payments. You only pay interest on what you use, and as you pay it back, that credit becomes available again. No reapplying, no extra steps. With competitive rates compared to most unsecured loans and flexible repayment options, this could be a smart move for your home and your wallet. Learn more about TrueMark Financial's home equity line of credit at TrueMark.com or stop by one of their 24 branch locations to get started. TrueMark Financial is federally insured by the NCUA and is an equal opportunity lender, NMLS 404938.
We are back on the PHLY Eagles podcast by Wulf EJ Smith, unpacking the long sit-down session with Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni ahead of them speaking today in Indianapolis at the Combine, where hopefully we will be. EJ, what's next on your list?
Yeah, Nick, Howie Roseman explaining his unprompted defense of Nick Sirianni during the end-of-year press conference. I thought it was interesting that Howie didn't deny that that was a priority for him to bring up during the press conference. It was very aptly pointed out by you in our podcast, reacting to it. So Howie went on to explain why he felt it was important for him to get to that in the end of your press conference. He said, "I don't think it's fair. I think to be a head coach in the National Football League for 5 years and to make the playoffs 5 years and be in 2 Super Bowls is hard. A lot of the strengths that he has are things that people don't get to see that I get to see every day. I thought it was important to get that out there and understand what he does. I hear it. He tells me all the time, if you're not the offensive coordinator, you're not the defensive coordinator, you're not the special teams coordinator. What do you do as a head coach? There's more to these jobs than just that." Poor Tim McManus,
man. But what do you mean? What do you think? Why do you? I mean, that's what he said. What do you think it means?
I mean, I do think that I think I take Howie at his word that he sees the value that Nick brings behind the scenes, the intangible things that, Nick does on a daily basis. And I think it's funny because whenever I'm on Anthony's show, I always point to like, Nick is a stickler for fundamentals and situational football. And obviously the Eagles weren't great in those two facets.
Right.
But they have been good in those facets under Nick in the past. Nick is more conservative than some of like the analytics based, analysts out there would be about these things, obviously. But I do think, the way that they've been historically under Nick, I think that he does deserve credit for those things. But I think again, Howie is trying to like point out he may not be the offensive play caller. Obviously, Vic Fangio gets a ton of credit for the way the defense looks, but I think that they do want to make sure that it's pointed out that he brings value in other ways. It's just, I understand for fans, it's hard to really, pinpoint what those ways are, which is why we have these conversations and why Tim asked the question, to be fair. Like, I feel bad for Tim in this because it's like,
I don't feel bad for Tim. He's doing a great job.
Well, no, I don't feel, obviously. Yeah. I mean, Tim's doing fine. He's not, I don't know if this really upsets him, but I think there's this like idea that like he created this narrative, and it's just like he asked the question that I think a lot of people talk about and bring up. He didn't make this up, and all of a sudden everybody ran with it. I think it's like the chicken or the egg but not even that vague. Like we know that it was.
No, there's no.
It's like the chicken or the egg if the chicken were the first thing,
Yeah, exactly. If we all saw that,
If we all saw the chicken first, yeah.
Okay. What else you got?
I thought a quick one. I thought it was noteworthy that Howie, when talking about Jahad Campbell, talking about the rookie class in general.
Asked about the rookie class.
Yeah, he said obviously Jahad, unique situation with the depth at that position, incredibly talented, hardworking, high character player who's got incredible potential. I thought it was noteworthy. He called it a unique situation with the way that last year played out. I agree with him. I think that's fair. But yeah, he definitely sounds high on both Jahad Campbell and Andrew Nakobe going into next year.
Well, what else is he going to say?
No, but I still, it sort of reminded me of, I guess it was 2 years ago when Howie was talking about how they had a lot of faith in Nakobe Dean. Not to say that, Jahad played better than Nakobe did to that point, but and didn't have the injury issues. Obviously, it doesn't have the injury issues, obviously, but I always find it noteworthy when he gives like a vote of confidence to a player. Still, he might not want to say anything otherwise, but still noteworthy that he mentioned that it was a unique situation that led to him getting benched in his rookie season.
You're right. He did. To his credit, back up Nakobe. Was that 2 off seasons ago?
Yeah. I think it was the question. I think I asked the question, not the flex. It's just, I do remember talking to him about linebackers. Did you? I made note of Nick on Parks Frazier. His,
yes, and in general on the other coaches as well. Yeah. So let's run a few of those down. The Parks Frazier thing was interesting, and it was interesting because it was Parks Frazier, Mahaffey, and even Chris Cooper. And what was interesting about all 3 of them was Nick's explanation was exactly the on the surface things that we saw from the outside. There was nothing like, you guys would not have believed the ideas I was getting from Mahaffey about the running game in our meeting. It was like all 3 of them were very much what we could see from the outside. It was Mahaffey. Well, if we're gonna have this run game, we gotta have somebody who's got experience with it, and he knows Sean. Okay, great. Same thing for Chris Cooper. Yeah, he was available, and he it's in the offense. Great. And then with Parks Frazier, it was like, well, where you need a translator.
Fran said it's literally what Fran said on our show.
We need a translator. He was with McDaniel, so he did 1 year on this offense. He knows Jaelan, and here we go.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny.
Honestly, this is just a PHLY Eagles podcast flex. Is that you listen to the show, why they make these hires before Nick Sirianni even talks, because I think it was Fran literally said Parks Frazier would be like a translator, because of the fact that he had experience working under Mike McDaniel and had experience working with Nick Sirianni in Indianapolis, and also obviously with the Eagles last year. And that is what Nick Sirianni talked about, is his ability to be a bridge between the system that they ran and the system that they are now installing. And I thought it was also noteworthy that Nick really did talk about, similar to how it was when Kellen Moore got hired, there was a notion out there that it was going to be a completely new system, but obviously the Eagles were going to keep some of the concepts that they have been successful with in the past and sort of mesh the two together. And I think that is going to be the case again this time. I think it's going to be an overhaul. I think we're going to see a lot of different things, in particular, early down run game is going to look a lot different. I think play action utilization and motion utilization, I think those things will be different. But I think that there will still be, listen, Hank, I know a lot of people are tired of Hank. I think we're probably still going to see some Hank with the Eagles offense. It's something that Nick Sirianni likes and something Jalen Hurts likes. And I think the Parks Frazier quarterbacks coach appointment kind of alludes to that.
Yeah,
it's not 100% new.
Listen, offense. We've had a lot of success on offense here over the past few years. It would be crazy for us not to incorporate some of the stuff that we've been successful with.
That sentence sounds fine. It's that's reasonable. But when it's Hank and it's well,
that's the thing. It's that's exactly right. It's a totally reasonable thing to say.
Yeah.
And of course it makes sense. Of course you're not going to have an entirely new offense. Of course, but it's so clearly coming from a place of, I am tired of people pretending like we don't run good offense and being proud of the offense we have run, which I don't know is the growth mindset you're looking for.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think there's like a
Even his defensive, he was talking about motion, and he's like, I mean, listen, we motioned a hell of a lot more the past couple of years, and like, I mean, sort of, not effectively.
yeah, not the motion for the motion's sake, which is what when they
Yeah.
got to Philadelphia, they were very cautionary about not motioning for the sake of motioning. Now we see what that means.
Yeah,
I think every football coach has an ego, right? Especially at this level, like you're going to have,
of course.
guys with egos, and I think this is probably one of the few ways. Actually, I'll give Nick Sirianni a compliment here. I think that he is one of the better coaches in terms of like suppressing his ego and like letting, because I think even the system that they do run, right, is a sort of like ego agnostic system to a certain degree. It's not about, I mean, what would Nick say? It's not about the plays, it's players, formations, plays. It's about, getting the player, doing what your players do best. And I do think like, for that reason, Nick isn't like one of these like guys who is really like devout or, married to a system. And for that reason, I do think he doesn't always get a lot of credit. And I think he's aware of that. I think he is aware that, putting the players first and running a system that can be a little bit nebulous at times. I do think that he probably thinks he deserves more credit for that than he gets from the outside world.
What did they say about Vic Fangio?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were both kind of like, I wouldn't want to go so far as saying dismissive, but probably like they both seem to try and diminish it a little bit. Like, yeah, we were in constant communication with them. We talked to him a lot, and we never were worried. But I don't know if I really take them at their word that like they never thought he was going to retire. But yeah, they basically said that they're in constant contact with him.
This was another one where I felt like Howie was more willing to get close to the truth.
Yeah,
he's like, I think he said like, hey, I was trying to convince him to come back,
right.
Whereas Nick was like, it was sort of not entertaining it. But then Howie lands it with, Vic was in my office before, like I can tell you, he is fired up.
Yeah,
there's no shortage of enthusiasm from him.
Their relationship is an interesting one to me.
Mm-hmm.
Vic and Howie, they seem like they would have huge arguments from time to time, but like they're the types that they could argue like really intensely and like walk out of the room and just be like, that was great, I love that
for
guy.
Sure. Absolutely. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Along those lines, how did you feel like they reacted to the questions about the perceived difficulty of the offensive coordinator search and finding people who wanted the job?
Yeah, they were not dismissive of that, I don't think, but they were sort of, I think pointing to the success of the organization is a fair thing to do. And I think that is the instinct, which is fair. It makes sense. It's like less about like, I don't think they were like introspective about it. I don't think it was, like, how could we be different? I think it's
right.
They can find candidates that fit what they do because what they do has led to a lot of success.
And as Nick said, Sean Mannion's fired up to be here, which that doesn't mean that like that's the reason to hire him, but it is true. Like if you are going to run your organization this way and it's been successful and you're not going to change it, of course, you only want people who want to be in that system.
Yeah, and I don't think totally there's anything fair. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Not at all. I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, I mean they're like I remember the charts that Dana has had. I don't know if they were charts when he pulled like how many teams have had long spells without being in the playoffs or long spells without winning the division, and how consistently successful the Eagles have been. Being in that building, two things that you hear a lot that probably are not that probably are correlated more than we even sometimes give it credit. Sustained success and not on scholarship, right? And I think that those two things, feed into each other. The Eagles have been able to sustain success because I think Howie Roseman, one of the big things that he talks about is like, that the notion that like you win a Super Bowl and everything is hunky dory and nobody cares what happens. Like that's not how they run their organization. It's not how, they view things. There's always an urgency to win. That's not necessarily for everyone, but yeah, for them it works. And I think you have to find people that fit into that. So maybe it made the offensive coordinator opening a little bit less desirable, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I think this isn't a case where I actually do think that they're probably right to say we're not changing how we operate so that, we can get slightly better coaches in here.
Now, you said, EJ, that your turkeys have increased on Jaelan Phillips's chances of
Yeah, and I didn't
re-signing.
want to do it.
I'm going to ask you about Reed Blankenship and Nakobe Dean, and I want to know if they have moved in either direction after talking to Howie Roseman. But I will not ask you that question now, EJ, or at least I will ask it, but I will not get the answer. I will get the answer in Reed and Nakobe. What do you think? More or less likely than they were on Thursday, as far as you're concerned?
I would probably say less likely. I thought Howie's introductory statement about where he's at going into this offseason, I thought it was, it was good insight, about the way that you want to build a team and how the Eagles kind of find themselves in that situation, and what there are some perceived drawbacks there, which is that you can't keep everyone and that you're not going to make splashy free agency signings necessarily. So, yeah, I would say Nakobe Dean, I'd probably put it at like 10, maybe 15, but I think 10 feels about right.
I think Nakobe is less likely.
I mean, there's a 10% chance that, it's not likely. No, there's a 5% chance that his market just doesn't materialize.
Yeah.
And the Eagles say, come back for another year. But even then, 5 feels about right for Nakobe. For Reed, Reed's tough. I think there's a real chance that Reed gets a lucrative deal in free agency.
Define lucrative.
10 to 12.
Okay.
Without looking, I don't have the safety market in front of me. Above 10, let's say. And are the Eagles shopping in that price range? I still feel like I'm going to put it at like a 43%. But I don't know. I still feel like there's a real chance he's back, but I also am trying to, especially like you mentioned, not the best free agency class. Is there a team that's got money to spend that is willing to spend it on Reed Blankenship to the degree that the Eagles aren't willing to play ball? I'm going to pull up the safety market here. Let's see. Yeah, I feel like, 10 is a good number. I say like Julian Love is at 11. Justin Reed at 10.5. Grant Delpit at 12. Talanoa Hufanga at 13. Yeah. What are you putting it at as I read these out? Javon Holland at 15. Jesse Bates at 16.
I think 40-ish. That's probably right.
14? 40-ish.
40-ish turkeys. Yeah. Now, just the safeties who are available: Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard, both guys with the Bears. Cam Curl, only 27. Ronnie Hickman, Nick Scott, Nick Cross, Alohi Gilman, Geno Stone, Reed Blankenship, Donovan Wilson, Kobe Bryant, C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson for a third time?
Tony Adams. Listen, this is the I think they probably won't, because we all know C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Super Bowl, leaves, bad year, back, Super Bowl, leaves, didn't make the Super Bowl. The pattern tells us if they bring him back, they will go to the Super Bowl. I think Howie Roseman's willingness to trade away Darian Kennard tells us that he does not buy into such things.
But if you were GM, you would.
I'd offer him a spot on the practice squad.
I'm sure he'd take that well.
Just to test the theory. Yeah.
I'm sure he would really respond well to the practice squad offer.
That actually does remind me. There's one other little thing to keep in the back of your mind that Howie Roseman said is he doubled down on he no longer wants to do in-season extensions.
Yeah.
He is willing to pay the price that it costs to lose money long term on what deal you might get because of what it means for keeping the locker room as one, all focused on the task at hand and not turning into independent contractors.
I was hoping you didn't say the independent contractors, because I like that I like that descriptor. That if you sign one of these guys and then the other guys are wondering if they're going to get extended, then they all turn into independent contractors. You got agents calling.
Now, the last time he did it was kind of it was a time when it did make sense, and that was the 2021 season when it went, it was Mailata and Avante and Sweat and Goddard, like it was the guys from the draft class. They all came in together. It was the beginning of the season, so it wasn't like midway through. The storytelling of it was also the first year under a new regime, so it's all part of that. Since then, he hasn't done it, and I think it's fair to say that unless it is a similar storytelling thing, that will not be the case.
Can I play out a hypothetical here that our viewers will not enjoy?
Sure.
If Jalen Carter doesn't get to Matthew Stafford in the divisional round of the playoffs, and the Eagles lose that game, so they do not win the Super Bowl, and then they lose Milton Williams in free agency, does that change Howie Roseman's stance on the no independent contractors, because you don't want to upset a team with Super Bowl aspirations?
That's a good question.
Because, like, all of this is anecdotal.
Yeah.
All of this is like, the Hassan Reddick, what year was that? 2023, right? Hassan Reddick getting upset about contract situations. Like, I think that is what I always attribute it to. That 2023 season is kind of when he made the change, like, okay, we're not doing this anymore. I don't know because I do think the way that Milton Williams played out, to me, it always stands out as like, that just doesn't feel like the type of thing the Eagles organization lets happen. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'd be different, but I'm not saying anybody would prefer that scenario.
Here's my last question do you have anything else to hit on here on your notes?
No, I think that was pretty much everything I had in my notes. I'm looking through here. Yeah, we mentioned the movement and athleticism thing that Howie talked about. Tanner, he said, I can't speak to what everyone else thinks of our players. I know that what we think of our players, really, it was not no or on whether or not they'd be willing to trade him. I think that's pretty much everything I had. Okay,
so my big question for you is, Howie opens with that big treatise on, I like splash, but this is not going to be a big dipping our toes into the free agency offseason, sort of downplaying expectations for the craziness ahead. Do you believe him? Do you think that this will be an offseason similar-ish to last year, where it's mostly about keeping the band together, and maybe there are a little bit of an uptick of outside people coming in, but nothing that's going to make us go, holy crap, and Howie did it again?
I still think there's a chance for the Howie Wowie, as my former colleague would always call it. Yeah. Okay. Shout out to Jeff McClain. I think there's still a chance for one of those. I don't think it's going to be in free agency. I don't think it's going to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they signed. Yeah, right. I don't think it's going to be that, but a trade, or like, an AJ Brown trade that nets something crazy in the draft. Could I see them, trading AJ for a late first and then packaging picks to move up to get like Kenyon Sadiq? Yeah, I could see that. And then all of a sudden it's like, look how Howie transformed this offense with shrewd trades. Yeah, I think that's your Howie Wowie potential here. Because I don't think it's going to be like a boring offseason. I'm sure that there will be things that surprise us. But I think it'll be probably more similar to last offseason, when like the Jahad Campbell pick was one where we're like, man, I can't believe that they pulled that off. I think it'd be one of those rather than like a crazy free agency signing.
Okay.
Like keeping Jaelan Phillips,
got some stuff up his sleeve.
Yeah, keeping Jaelan Phillips, drafting like a Kenyon Sadiq or like some dynamic player that you don't expect to be there for them. And maybe keeping AJ Brown in this scenario, or trading him for something that we didn't expect them to be able to get back for him. Yeah, I could see that being the Howie splash, because you're right. There's always a splash potential. There's a couple things like covering this team that you have to be always aware of and account for. You know, I was joking with somebody last week that, like, you know, shout out to the Over the Cap guys, because like they do these like good breakdowns of Eagles contract situations. And I said to someone, like, the Eagles lead the league in like 30-minute explainers for contracts on their roster because their salary cap stuff is so complicated. And, you know, this is another one where it's like I have to be up on a lot of weird things that, you know, most teams wouldn't expect to have happen.
All right, let's get to the super chats before we get out of here. EJ, CDP checks in and he says, EJ, do you how do you make your peanut butter and jelly?
You saying that just made me sad because I enlisted my wife to contribute to this road trip that we were supposed to be on, like right now. Literally, as the show airs, we were supposed to be on a road trip together, and I was gonna bring she was gonna make like a homemade. Again, like, it's not my kindness, it's my wife's kindness. She was gonna make this like homemade, like you know, the Tandy cakes, the peanut butter tasty cakes.
Okay.
Yeah, she was gonna make those like homemade. I was gonna bring them for you guys on the road. Wow. So yeah, it just made me sad all over again.
I know. I wish we had just done the road trip.
We should just do a road trip some other time.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to work for the owners' meetings. That's a little bit too far away.
Yeah, too far away. Maybe an Eagles road
year.
Game.
Let's just play on the combine next year. We're just driving.
Could we do like an Eagles road game and we like do the post game pod somewhere?
We're thinking about.
Got to talk to the overlords about this.
One more super chat, I believe, from Lindsay's husband.
Shout out. Are we Mr. Lindsay? We keep him anonymous.
Mr.
Right?
Lindsay, yeah.
Shout out Mr. Lindsay.
Who says, okay, Lindsay, it's your turn. Now that the show's over. I don't know.
I was about to say,
you're welcome for shuffling.
Her. Yeah, you're welcome for shoveling.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. Now, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni will talk again. Now, they're not going to say that as I have said before, this particular press conference from Howie Roseman is the least honest he will ever be.
Yeah.
Over the course of the offseason. They are obfuscating purposefully at this stage of the offseason. But we'll see what they say, and we will try to make sense of it. We will also hopefully hear from some other people around the NFL about what's going on with the Eagles this offseason. We'll have you covered. Check out the YouTube channel for anything that else that pops up. And then we will be live 10 a.m. on Wednesday to continue our coverage from the Combine. Fran on the scene. Don't miss it. Big week. We'll talk to you later. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.